How has having kids changed your perspective? At what age were you when you started having kids?
I was 32 when I had my first one. And you got to realize, I love kids. If I could, I'd have 20 kids. We just got married late, and my wife is not comfortable having more kids. We were supposed to have twins. One of them didn't make it, so we made a decision. We got 4 right now. Yeah. Decision was to have 5. We were going to have 5. One didn't make it, and we got 4. We're very happy. But what do kids do? So think about, Jordan Peterson said something very interesting. He says, man will not really lose the ability to be selfish until you have a kid. I'm not necessarily saying it specifically the way he said it, but once you have a kid, something changes about you. Because everything's about, I'm going to go do this. And yeah, you love your wife, but you love your wife in a different way than you love your mom, in a different way than you love your dad, in a different way than you love your, brother or sister, than the way you love your best friend, than the way you love your career, than the way you love your kid. I've experienced all those loves. It's a very, very different love for your kid. Now, having said that, somebody's going to watch us and say, I'm going to go make a baby tonight. Okay? I highly discourage of doing that, because before you have a kid, you have to also know it doesn't take a lot to make a kid. It takes a lot to raise a kid. Right. We have Shaq here. So Shaq's story is an interesting one with his father, where his biological father wasn't there. He went to jail when he was born. So this other gentleman comes in who helps raise him. And there's a lot of great stories about the way his father raised him. One time, Shaq got caught drinking beer at 13 years old. So his dad finds out he's drinking beer. So he goes to his dad, says, you want to drink beer? He says, no, I'm just having beer, Dad. He says, no problem, come with me. He has him drink 12 beers that night. He says, I hated it so much, I never touched beer ever again. I couldn't stand it. Now, whether he had it or
backfire.
not,
I mean,
it is what that could backfire.
Like, I loved it. I had so much fun since then.
It was fantastic. But the point is, you hear these stories and you say, okay, at least his father, whether you want to call it stepfather or not, he was committed to wanting to raise leaders. You have to love raising leaders. If that's not something that you value and it's not a dream of yours, don't have kids. But, the Jewish proverb says there's 3 things every man should do, okay? Plant a tree, write a book, have a son, okay? Because all those 3 outlive you. When you write a book, if you write a good book, people are going to read it when you're dead. When you plant a tree, if you do it right, it's going to outlive you. When you have a son, it's going to outlive you, and your legacy continues. So it's a very different dynamic. You officially are in 2 places at the same time. It's where you are, and it's wherever your kid is at. If you got 2 kids, 3 different places at the same time, you're always thinking, but it's a different dynamic, that's for sure.
So I have a friend, Alex Hormozy. We had him on the podcast, and he said he would have a hard time having a kid because what if his kid didn't turn out to be the type of man that he would want his kid to be?
Okay, so great question. So let's talk about that. We're on a flight yesterday, and in our family, what we do is we debate. We like debate. So I'll tell the kids, who's better, Marvel or Avengers? One kid will say, oh, definitely Marvel. And the other kid will say Avengers. I said, let's debate it. Why do you think? And we'll debate for 30 minutes. So yesterday we're flying out here, myself, my wife, Sam, Mario, and Tom, and the kids, and we started a debate. So let me ask you a question. My sons are sitting there, 10 and 8. I said, would you rather marry a girl who you're crazy about her more than she's for you, or would you rather marry a girl who she's more crazy about you than you're for her?
That's a good question, yeah.
You should have seen what happened. First of all, no joke, a couple of the people on the flight, I won't mention them, started crying an hour and a half later because it's an emotional conversation. Because you go deeper and deeper and deeper, because the risk is if you love her more and she doesn't love you as much, what if she gets bored? But then the risk is, what if you marry somebody that she loves you more, but you get bored? What if you then go bored and do something? So there's a risk. So here's the moral of the story to Alex. Alex is an absolute stud of a guy, and I think he's doing a phenomenal job for society with the message he's given, and it's a different kind of a message, but it's crystal clear. He's a great teacher. He's doing a very good job. I think that guy's going to be a giant in the content creation. He's already doing great for business, but in content creation. But let me make the point too with what he said. Everything in life is a risk. You choose to get married, it's a risk. You choose to stay single, it's a risk. You choose to have kids, you're taking a risk. You choose to not have kids, you're taking a risk. There isn't anything in life you do that's not a risk. I can choose to have been I could have chosen to have been a bachelor living in a $40 million penthouse in Miami and had different girls coming every night. But then I asked the question, I said, so what will my Tuesday night look like? What will my weekend look like? What will my Friday night look like at 43? What am I doing? Okay, cool. One weekend you do it, it's cool. 5 girls, 10 girls, 20 girls, 30 girls. Then what? What are you chasing? Are you trying to compete with Will Chamberlain? You're going after Warren Beatty? What record are you trying to break? And then what if you get that record? Are they going to put a frame in a Hall of Fame saying 5,293 different? Who cares about that? Only guys in their 20s may care about that, or some other people may care about that. But some people may care for that. That's still a risk. It's a lonely life eventually, okay, if you end up in that space. But I've said this as well when it comes down to marriage. You get married, if you want to have kids, your family will benefit more if you're married instead of not being married. And there's a very clear argument for not having kids, especially today. It's a very big risk for having kids today. Because if you don't have money, say you have a certain set of values, like he's not in risk. But certain people will be in risk. Say you have certain values that you want to teach your kids, but you can't send your kids to a private school. Your kids will go to public school. What happens if your kids go to public school? How much control and influence do you have over what those teachers 8 hours a day will teach your kids? You have this much influence, okay? Because you ain't paying for it. Taxpayers are paying for it, right? There is massive risk. You bring this kid here, you raise him, you feed him, you finance him, and then other people shape their mindset. That's a massive risk. So for me, the argument of not having kids if you don't have the money to put them in a private school that teaches the values and principles that you want to teach, I fully understand that argument. But the idea for Alex, who can afford to have 50 kids himself, to say, I don't want to have kids because what if that kid turns out bad? He's right. It's going to. That's why you don't have only one kid, Alex. You have 5 kids. Can you play the odds game?
If you enjoyed this video, I gave a keynote a few weeks ago in Las Vegas, specifically on the topic of cracking the code to content creation. If you've not seen it, click here to watch it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.